Good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with a hurricane outlook and discussion recorded on May 26, 2023, recorded on 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot of things to go over today, including a storm alert for the Carolinas as a coastal storm is brewing off the southeast U.S. coast. What is expected to happen and what potential impacts are there? Let's go ahead and find out. Taking a wide look out there across the Atlantic Basin this morning, we noticed that there is not much occurring as of right now. We have a few areas of thunderstorms out there across the Atlantic. First of all, off the coast of Africa, we have a few tropical waves. We also have a tropical wave that is now approaching Barbados and the Lesser Antilles, Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada. Some of those areas could get in on some of the heavier rain associated with this little tropical wave out here approaching the island chain, but no tropical cyclone formation is expected out of this system. And then we're also watching this system off the southeast United States coast. This has a 10% chance of development over the next 7 days as this moves generally towards the South Carolina coastline. Looking at the tropical weather outlook that was issued this morning as of 8 a.m., we noticed that there is that 10% area off the southeast United States coast with an area of low pressure that is formed just off the coast of Florida. This system is moving off towards the north-northeast and will continue to do so over the next couple of days. However, development chances are only at a 10% due to unfavorable upper-level conditions, but still could bring some gusty winds and heavy rainfall. And for that, we'll go ahead and look at some of the forecast guidance. So if we actually take a look here at the visible satellite imagery for this morning, we notice that we have a large complex of shower and thunderstorm activity and large overall cloudiness stretching all the way from Bermuda down here to the eastern part of the Florida Peninsula, and a large area of shower and thunderstorm activity just off the southeast United States coast here. We notice that in the mean sea level pressure field, there's not a well-defined area of low pressure, and you can see these arrows here. This is the 10-meter wind field, indicating the winds just above the surface here at 10 meters off the ground. And we notice that there's not a very large area of any rotation in here. No real closed contours in here, indicating that the area of low pressure is fairly weak and it's just a broad trough at this point. But we actually notice off the southeast United States coast, especially the northern part of Florida, South Carolina, and North Carolina, even into Virginia, where we have the offshore monitoring, these offshore weather monitoring sites measuring wind gusts down to near 43 miles per hour just off of the Charleston, South Carolina vicinity, 34 just near Savannah, 40 off the coast there of southeastern Georgia, and near 40 just south of Jacksonville. And these are all ship and buoy located weather monitoring sites that are measuring these strong wind gusts, even near 30 miles per hour just off or well to the south and east there of Havelock. This is actually a marine observation site. Sustained winds 20 gusting to 25. You can see here sustained just off the coast of South Carolina. Sustained 34 gusting to 43. And this is a tightening of the pressure gradient here between the area of high pressure to the north and the area of relatively lower pressure down here to the south. And this will all be moving in the general direction of the Carolinas during the next several days. So if we actually back this out here and look at the precipitation field at the moment, we notice that there's a large area of rain that is moving into the Carolinas at this particular point in time, and even rain all the way down into the southern Florida Peninsula at this point. So let's go ahead and zoom in here, see what's going on. So we can see some of the areas being affected right now by this larger area of precipitation: Wilmington, North Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina, and then lighter precipitation, or less coverage of precipitation rather, along the central Florida Peninsula. We notice that this massive rain is beginning to kind of spiral, and it is beginning to rotate in some of these areas, meaning that this area of low pressure is becoming a little bit more established as we progress throughout the remainder of today. And again, this will continue to be the case as the system drifts slowly off towards kind of the north-northeast and eventually turns back inland towards the north-northwest, and eventually will move over the South Carolina, North Carolina vicinity within the next several days, bringing with it some heavy rainfall and gusty winds. So taking a look here at our high resolution forecast guidance, this is looking at the wind gust expected over the next 51 hours through the beginning of May 28th. So we'll go ahead and run this forward and let this play out. And we notice how there's going to be a widespread coverage of 30 to 40 mile per hour gusts, even some locally higher gusts in locations. Well, I should go ahead and zoom this on in and take a look at some of the areas that are to be impacted the most. So we notice here this is actually running forward here to later this afternoon by about 2 o'clock. We notice some of those heavier gusts that are already occurring across the Jacksonville area, with that 38 miles per hour that was just south of Jacksonville a little while ago. Savannah getting in on some of those stronger winds, Myrtle Beach as well, up to Jacksonville, North Carolina, and the Outer Banks as well, getting hit with some pretty breezy conditions as well. So as we go ahead and run this forward, we actually notice that there becomes some pretty strong winds just off the coast here. Over 60 miles per hour that is to be expected off the coast. And this is as a response to the tightening pressure gradient between the high pressure to the north and relatively lower pressure to the south. This is not anything tropical in nature. This is just purely pressure gradient forces combining to give us some pretty significant winds just off the coast. So very strong winds just off the coast there. Near 40 miles per hour pushing inland now into portions of far southern South Carolina. 40 near Jacksonville, Florida. 37 up there in Marion County, Florida. And 27 near Jacksonville, North Carolina. Continuing to run this forward and run this in, you notice that some of these stronger gusts over 40 miles per hour do end up reaching the coast, with some isolated 50 mile per hour winds that are to be expected in areas over the next couple of days. So this just kind of gives you an area or kind of a broad picture overview of what to expect as we roll through the beginning of tomorrow morning. This forecast is valid right around about 7 a.m. in the morning. Run this forward out even further in time, and we notice that some of those 50 mile per hour wind gusts do approach the Myrtle Beach area. Upwards of 35 miles per hour getting up there. It's well to the north of Greenville, Spartanburg, up there near Columbia, and down there in the low country, certainly still getting some fairly significant winds as well. And this spreads all the way northward as well. This is not just exclusively limited to the coast. Even 40 mile per hour winds up there closer in the southwest of Roanoke, Virginia, about 35 to 40 near Atlanta, Georgia. Based on this guidance alone, this definitely indicates that there's going to be a lot of widespread wind with this system, and eventually that wind energy begins to kind of calm down as this system progresses further inland and the pressure gradient begins to weaken, but still could be dealing with some pretty gusty winds from time to time, even out onto the 28th. So here's a look at our high resolution precipitation forecast. This beginning as of 8 a.m. this morning. We notice that the precipitation is nicely modeled there off the South Carolina coast at this point. We'll go ahead and run this forward, and we notice that progressing over the next couple of hours into early tomorrow morning, we notice that heavy rain begins to spread inland, and by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, we are looking at precipitation overspreading the entirety of the coastal portions of South Carolina and portions of southwestern North Carolina, as well as this area of low pressure begins to move closer to the coast, with some lighter rain inevitably making it all the way up to near Charlotte and all the way to near Greenville, Spartanburg as well. And this storm system begins to creep then inland throughout the remainder of this time. And notice all the tropical moisture that is being pulled around. So even as this area of low pressure moves inland at this time and as well inland on the 28th, there is still a lot of precipitation being pulled on the back side of this. So it would not surprise me to see rainfall amounts in some of these areas, especially in northeastern South Carolina and into portions of the southeastern part of North Carolina. Some rainfall totals could exceed over 5 inches in locations, just kind of depending on the randomness of how these convective bands, move through. But it would not surprise me in the least to see some of that happen, where you get some of these 5 to potentially even 6-inch rainfall totals, especially in the coastal areas. And we can see this playing out here on the precipitable water field. We're basically just looking at how much moisture is in the atmosphere. And all of these warmer colors in here, this indicates the potential for some pretty significant moisture to be associated in the atmosphere, ultimately giving you more rainfall and more efficient precipitation to come out of the clouds, basically meaning more rain for the area. And we notice that as this area of low pressure gets established heading into the day tomorrow, we'll move this out to about 2 p.m. tomorrow, close to 3 p.m. tomorrow. We notice that the area of low pressure here on our high resolution forecast guidance is sitting just off the coast here of Florida. Now, in all reality, it seems like that this area of low pressure will probably be positioned a little bit closer to Savannah and Charleston, but irregardless of the exact placement, we notice all of this deep tropical moisture beginning to basically just spread over the entirety of the area and eventually kind of move inland. And you notice that some of those warmer colors here, these kind of purples and reds, indicating higher moisture content in the atmosphere, does reach the South Carolina, North Carolina coastline here. And this indicates to me that this area has a heightened potential of seeing some flooding rain potential and also the potential for potentially a few severe storms, given that there will be enough shear in the atmosphere. And with those warmer temperatures just off the coast here, it would not completely surprise me to see one or two potential even tornado warnings out there across portions of South Carolina and coastal North Carolina as well. But we notice even as this area of low pressure kind of dives inland, you notice that much drier and cooler conditions come to the Florida Peninsula, as this is more than likely to be a front. So this kind of acts as a cold front here. But we notice all this deep tropical moisture kind of diving into the area by Memorial Day. And this is going to set the stage for a pretty soggy, wet, and just nasty weekend. So finally here, taking a look at the total precipitation that is expected to fall over the next several days coming off our high resolution forecast models. This is valid tomorrow as just around 7 a.m. We'll go ahead and zoom this in. We notice the extensive rainfall just off the South Carolina coast of over 7.5 inches there, and already seeing over 1 inch of rainfall near the Dorchester, Colleton County area, near Charleston, and just to the southwest of Myrtle Beach, and even over 2 inches of rain there in Jacksonville, Florida. That just kind of gives you an idea of the wide expanse that this area is going to see over the next couple of days. We'll go ahead and move this forward, and we'll move this out to later in the evening, afternoon, and evening time tomorrow, with over 3 inches of rain, Dorchester, Colleton County region, generally up to near 2 inches near Columbia, and kind of just that little narrow band of precipitation. We're looking over 3 inches of rain there near Wilmington, North Carolina as well. And again, generally over 2.5 there near Jacksonville. And we'll go ahead and continue this all the way out to the 28th. So this is looking at, I think this would be Sunday or Monday. And we're seeing, again, generally over 6 inches of rainfall, just like we were talking about near Wilmington, North Carolina, just about 4.5 down there near Dorchester, Colleton counties, over 2.5 near Columbia, even 2.5 there in the portions of northeastern Georgia as well. So precipitation is going to be quite on the heavy side over the next couple of days, and coastal areas are expected to generally have a washout for this weekend. And one final look here at the Eastern Pacific Basin. All is pretty quiet right now. We do have a few disturbances down here in the intertropical convergence zone, but we notice some pretty strong upper level winds here, just roughly stretching from Honolulu all the way down into basically the Baja Peninsula. And so this will basically just shut down any significant tropical development over the next while. And tropical cyclone formation is not currently anticipated over the next several days in the Eastern Pacific. So with that being said, I do hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. As always, God bless, take care, and I'll talk to you guys again some more over the next several days.